I need to tell you what happened to Marcus and me up at Cedar Creek. This was back in October 1978. We'd been planning this trip for months, a proper wilderness hunt in the Canadian Rockies. Marcus had found this remote area through an old hunting magazine. No phone lines for 60 miles, no roads, just pure, untouched wilderness. We'd been hiking for 3 days when the weather turned. What started as light snow became a full blizzard, the kind that makes you realise how small you are out there. We were following an old trapper's trail when Marcus spotted something through the trees. "There," he said, pointing through the swirling snow. "Looks like a building." At first, I thought it was just another deadfall. But as we got closer, the outline became clearer. A hunting lodge. Old. Real old. The structure looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Moss covered the logs like a thick blanket. Half the windows were missing their glass. The foundation was crumbling, eaten away by years of freeze and thaw cycles. But we needed shelter, the storm was getting worse, and our tent wouldn't hold up against these winds. "Better than nothing," Marcus said, shouldering his pack. The front door hung crooked on rusted hinges. It took both of us to push it open far enough to squeeze inside. The smell hit us first, that musty, damp odour of abandonment. Rotting wood, mildew, the kind of smell that tells you a place has been dead for a long time. Most of the interior was what you'd expect. Collapsed ceiling beams, furniture covered in decades of dust and animal droppings, water damage everywhere. But then we found the main gathering room. The door to this room was solid oak, heavy and well fitted. When Marcus turned the handle, it opened smoothly, no creaking, no resistance. Inside, everything was different. The air was clean, dry, no smell of decay at all. The furniture, a few leather chairs, a stone fireplace, a heavy wooden desk looked like they'd been placed there yesterday. "This is weird," Marcus said, running his finger along the desk. No dust, not even a thin layer. I was more practical about it. Someone's been maintaining this room. Probably the landowner uses it as a hunting cabin. But even as I said it, something felt off. The windows in this room were intact, but they were old glass, hand-blown, the kind they stopped making in the 1940s. And outside those windows, I could see the same decay and abandonment that covered the rest of the building. Marcus was examining something on the desk, a large, leather-bound book. "Guest registry," he said, opening the cover. The first entry was dated May 15th, 1923. Neat handwriting in faded ink. "Samuel Morrison, excellent hunting. Will return next season." Page after page of entries. Different handwriting, different names, but all following the same pattern. Date, name, brief comment about the hunting or the weather. I read over Marcus's shoulder as he flipped through. The entries were consistent through the decades. 1930s, 40s, 50s. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink faded to brown. Then Marcus stopped turning pages. "Look at this." The last entry from the old era was dated October 16th, 1962. "James Peterson, last hunt of the season. Lodge needs repairs." The next page was completely different. The paper was newer, whiter, and the date made my stomach drop. October 16th, 2083. "That's impossible," I said. "That's over 100 years from now." But there it was, in fresh black ink. Robert Chen finally made it back. The woods remember everything. Marcus flipped to the next page, October 17th, 2083, then October 18th. Page after page of future dates, all with entries, all in ink that looked like it had been written yesterday. "This is someone's idea of a joke," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. Marcus kept reading. The entries got stranger as the dates moved further into the future. Some were single sentences, others were longer, more rambling. All of them had an odd quality, like they were written by people who were confused, disoriented. November 3rd, 2085. Got turned around. Followed my own tracks for hours before I realised. March 22nd, 2088. The compass spins. North isn't where it should be. August 8th, 2091. Found my campsite from last time, fire still warm. "We need to leave," I said, "now." But Marcus was transfixed. He kept turning pages, reading entry after entry of impossible future dates. That's when I noticed the wind had stopped. Outside, the blizzard was still raging. I could see the snow whipping past the windows, but inside this room, I couldn't hear it anymore. The silence was complete, unnatural. Marcus. He wasn't listening. He was staring at a page near the back of the book. "Marcus, we need to go. Look at this date," he whispered. I looked. The entry was dated November 4th, 2099. The handwriting was shaky but legible. Ben, AD. Ben. My name. Below the signature was a short note. Wind stopped. No sound. Found the book. Don't know how I got back here. My hands started shaking. That's not my handwriting. But even as I said it, I recognized something familiar in the loops and curves of the letters. Marcus flipped ahead a few more pages. October the 17th, 2104. The handwriting here was barely legible, like someone had written it with an injured hand. "Marcus," it said. The signature was smeared with something dark and sticky. Came back for the light. Left the axe. Marcus dropped the book like it had burned him. "This isn't real," he said. "This can't be real." But I was already looking at today's date on my watch. October the 16th, 1978. I flipped back through the book, scanning the dates. The entries jumped around chronologically, but there was a pattern. October 16th appeared over and over. Different years, but always October 16th. Like anniversaries. "We're leaving," I said. "Right now." But Marcus was staring at the last entry in the book. The ink was so fresh it was still slightly wet. October 16th, 1978, tonight's date. The signature was illegible, a shaky scrawl, but below it, in the same unsteady handwriting, they came back. Both of them, just like the book said they would. I grabbed Marcus by the shoulder. "Move, now!" But he was frozen, staring at that final entry. "That's today," he whispered. "Someone wrote that today." I was already moving, grabbing our packs, heading for the door, but Marcus wasn't following. "We have to watch," he said. "We have to see who signs it next." "No, we're leaving." "But what if we're supposed to be here? What if this is how it happens?" I stopped at the door. "How what happens?" Marcus looked back at the book. "Our names are in there, in the future. What if running away is what causes us to come back?" The logic was insane. But looking at that book, at those impossible dates and fresh signatures, insane was starting to feel relative. "We'll seal it," Marcus said suddenly. "Watch it, prove it's fake." Before I could stop him, he was tearing a thin strip of paper from his notebook. He placed it between the last signed page and the next blank page, then closed the book. He found 2 pieces of scrap wood and pressed them against the covers, weighing them down with a heavy lantern. "If someone opens this book, we'll know," he said. I wanted to leave. Every instinct told me to grab our gear and walk back into that blizzard. But the storm was getting worse, and we both knew it. We'd freeze to death before we made it a mile. So we stayed. We built a fire in the stone fireplace. The wood was dry, well seasoned, like someone had prepared it recently. It burned clean and bright, but somehow the light didn't seem to reach the corners of the room. We took turns keeping watch. The plan was simple. One of us would stare at the book while the other rested. If anything happened, if anyone entered the room, if the book moved, if anything at all changed, we'd both see it. Marcus took the first watch. I tried to sleep in one of the leather chairs, but every sound made me jump. The fire crackling, the wind outside, the old building settling. At 3 a.m, Marcus woke me for my turn. "Nothing," he said. "Book hasn't moved. No one's been here." I took up position facing the desk. The book sat exactly where we'd left it, weighted down by the wooden boards. The strip of paper was still visible, jutting out slightly from between the pages. Marcus settled into the other chair. Within minutes his breathing had deepened into sleep. I stared at that book for what felt like hours. My eyes started to burn from not blinking, but I didn't look away, couldn't look away. At 3:07 M, I heard something outside, a sound like footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling the building. I looked toward the window. The storm had died down, and I could see moonlight filtering through the clouds, but I couldn't see anything moving out there. The footsteps stopped. I turned back to the book. The wooden boards had shifted slightly, just a fraction of an inch, but I was sure they'd been perfectly aligned before. The strip of paper was gone. "Marcus!" I shouted. He jerked awake, immediately alert. "What?" "The book. Look at the book." Marcus stared at the desk. The wooden boards were askew now, like someone had moved them carefully aside and then replaced them imperfectly. With shaking hands, I opened the book to the last page we'd marked. A new entry, fresh ink, still slightly wet. October 17th, 1979. 1 year in the future. Robert Kim. They're watching now. They know. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. We were both right here. But the evidence was undeniable. Someone or something had opened that book, moved those boards, and signed a new entry, all while we were in the same room. And I had been watching the entire time. We have to go, I said. Now. Storm or no storm. But Marcus was flipping through the pages again, scanning the future dates. Wait, he said, look at this. He'd found another entry with my name. This one was dated December 12th, 1981. The handwriting was definitely mine, but older somehow. More careful. Came back to warn them. They won't listen. They never listen. Below that. The book chooses its own schedule. Time isn't a river here. It's a whirlpool. Marcus found his own name again too. Multiple entries scattered across different future years. The last one was dated 2104, just like before. But now I could read the full entry. Marcus' final visit. Left everything I could find. The axe is under the loose floorboard. Third stone from the fireplace. Maybe they'll be smarter than I was. Marcus was already moving, counting stones from the fireplace. The third stone was loose, just like the entry said. Underneath was a small space, and inside that space was a hand axe. The handle was worn smooth from use. The blade was sharp, recently maintained. Scratched into the wood of the handle were initials, Emma Marcus Rodriguez, his full name. I don't understand, Marcus said, holding the axe. I've never been here before. I've never carved my initials in anything. But the initials were definitely his work. I'd seen him carve those same letters in that same style on a dozen different camping trips. I was looking through the book again, searching for more entries with our names. The pattern was becoming clearer. We kept coming back, different years, different seasons, but always returning to this room, to this book. And each time, we were a little more desperate, a little more confused. The entry from 2099. My entry mentioned not knowing how I got back here. The one from 2104, Marcus's final visit, talked about leaving the axe for them, for us. Like our future selves were trying to help our present selves survive something. What are we running from? I asked aloud. Marcus was reading over my shoulder. Look at the earlier entries, the ones from the 1920s and 30s. I flipped back to the beginning. Those old entries, the ones in faded brown ink, suddenly looked different. I read them more carefully. Samuel Morrison, 1923. Excellent hunting. Will return next season. But there was more, in smaller text below. Strange dreams. Felt like I'd been here before. George Patterson, 1931. Good weather for October. Shot a 10-point buck. And below. Found my old campsite. Don't remember making it. Entry after entry, the same pattern. Normal hunting reports on the surface, but underneath, notes about confusion, déjà vu, dreams that felt like memories. They all came back, Marcus said. Every single one of them. Look, he was right. The same names appeared multiple times throughout the decades. Samuel Morrison had entries spanning from 1923 to 1947. Always in October. Always with notes about feeling like he'd been there before. His final entry, 1947. This is my last time. I know what happens next. The loop is complete. No more entries after that date. At least not until 1962. It's a trap, I said. This place, this room. It keeps people coming back. Marcus was staring at his own signature in the book. The one dated 2104. Came back for the light. Left the axe. What light? He asked. I looked around the room. The fire was burning low now, casting dancing shadows on the walls. But there was another source of light, something I hadn't noticed before. The book itself was glowing. Not bright, just a faint luminescence like foxfire or phosphorescent algae. The kind of glow you only notice when everything else is dark. The book, I said. That's the light. Marcus reached toward it, but I grabbed his hand. Don't touch it. But he was already pulling away from me, drawn to that soft glow, like a moth to flame. I have to know, he said. I have to understand how this works. His fingers touched the leather cover. The moment his skin made contact, the room changed. The walls seemed to stretch, becoming longer and taller. The fire in the fireplace flared up, but instead of warmth, it gave off a cold light. And everywhere on the walls, in the air, Floating around us like smoke were images. Scenes of people in this room. Different clothes, different decades, but all doing the same thing. Signing the book, reading the entries, trying to understand. I saw Samuel Morrison from the 1920s, young and confused, staring at future entries in the book. I saw George Patterson, decades later, making the same discoveries we were making now. And I saw ourselves, multiple versions of ourselves from different years. An older me with grey hair, desperately writing in the book. An older Marcus with a scar across his face, leaving the axe under the loose stone. It's not a trap, Marcus whispered, his hand still on the book. It's a record. Everyone who ever finds this place leaves part of themselves here. The book collects us. The images were getting stronger now. I could see more clearly. Our future selves weren't just visiting this place. They were stuck here, pulled back, again and again, trying to solve a puzzle that had no solution. Let go of the book, I said. But Marcus wasn't listening. He was reading something I couldn't see, his eyes moving back and forth across pages that seemed to be writing themselves. It's beautiful, he said. I can see all of it. Every moment, every choice. It's all connected. I grabbed his shoulders and pulled him away from the desk. The moment his hand lost contact with the book, the vision stopped. The room snapped back to normal size. The fire resumed its normal orange glow. But Marcus had changed. His eyes were different, older, like he'd seen something that aged him decades in second. We have to leave, he said. Right now. Before midnight. Why midnight? That's when it resets. That's when the cycle completes and we become part of it permanently. I looked at my watch, 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes. We grabbed our packs and headed for the door, but as we reached the threshold, Marcus stopped. Wait, he said. The book. What if someone else finds it? That's not our problem. But what if it's us? What if we're the next ones to find it? What if leaving now is what causes us to come back in the future? The logic was circular, maddening. But looking at that glowing book, at those impossible entries written in our own handwriting, I couldn't dismiss it entirely. 13 minutes isn't enough time to solve this, I said. We can't figure out in 13 minutes what people have been trying to understand for over 50 years. Marcus nodded, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. We stepped out into the night. The storm had completely stopped. The air was crystal clear and bitterly cold. Stars filled the sky like scattered diamond. Our footsteps crunched in the snow as we moved away from the lodge, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Not by something outside, by the book itself. So, at exactly midnight, I heard something behind us, a sound like leather binding creaking open, like pages being turned. I didn't look back. We hiked through the night, using our flashlights to follow our own trail back towards civilization. Neither of us spoke much. We were both processing what we'd experienced, trying to make sense of the impossible. Dawn found us at the edge of the wilderness, where the old trapper's trail met a logging road. A park ranger's truck was parked there, engine running. The ranger was a weathered man in his 50s. His nameplate read Harrison. "You boys okay?" he asked. We had reports of missing hikers. "We're fine," I said. "Just got caught in the storm." Harrison's eyes studied us carefully. "Storm ended 12 hours ago. You've been out there all night." "Yeah, we found shelter in an old hunting lodge." The moment I said it, Harrison's expression changed. The concern in his eyes was replaced by something else, recognition and fear. "Which lodge?" he asked quietly. "Cedar Creek," Marcus said. "Old place, mostly falling down, except for one room." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened the passenger door of his truck. "Get in," he said. "Both of you." As we drove toward town, Harrison kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror. "Did you find anything unusual at the lodge?" he asked finally. Marcus and I exchanged looks. "Like what?" I asked. "Guest book, leather-bound, old." My blood went cold. "You know about the book?" Harrison pulled over to the side of the road and turned around to face us. "I've been a ranger in these parts for 18 years, he said. Cedar Creek Lodge has been abandoned since 1962, but every few years, hikers go missing in that area, usually in October. Some come back after a day or two, talking about an old guest book with impossible dates. Others..." He trailed off. "Others what?" Marcus asked. "Others keep coming back. Different seasons, different years. Sometimes alone, sometimes in groups. They all talk about the same thing. The book, the signatures, the feeling that they've been there before. Harrison started driving again, but slower now. "There's a file back at the station," he said. "Photos of people who've gone missing near Cedar Creek over the past 16 years. Same faces showing up in different decades. They age, but they keep returning. Like they can't stay away." "That's impossible," I said. Harrison glanced at me in the mirror again. "Is it? You tell me, how do you feel right now? About leaving that place?" The question hit me like a physical blow, because the truth was, I didn't feel relieved. I felt incomplete, like I'd left something important behind, something I needed. Looking at Marcus, I could see he felt the same way. "It will get stronger," Harrison said. "The pull. Most people resist it for a while, months, sometimes years. But eventually, they all come back." "But we destroyed the book," Marcus said suddenly. "We could go back and burn it." Harrison shook his head. "Others have tried, but the book isn't really there. Not in the way you think. It's more like a reflection, a shadow of something bigger." We drove the rest of the way to town in silence. Harrison dropped us off at the bus station, but before we got out, he handed me a card. "My direct number," he said. "When you start feeling the pull, and you will call me first. Don't go back alone." The bus ride home took 8 hours. Marcus and I sat next to each other, but we barely spoke. We were both lost in our own thoughts, trying to process what had happened. But as the miles passed, I found myself thinking less about the impossibility of what we'd experienced, and more about the feeling of incompleteness, like I'd started reading a book and walked away before the ending. That was 12 years ago. The pull Harrison warned us about started almost immediately. Within days of returning home, I was researching the area in the library, looking at maps, checking weather reports for the region. I told myself it was just curiosity, but deep down, I knew better. Marcus felt it too. He'd call me late at night just to talk about normal things, but I could hear it in his voice, the same restless energy that was keeping me awake. 2 weeks ago he called with news that made my heart race. "I found something," he said, "about the lodge, about the book." He'd been researching the history of the area, following paper trails through old surveyor reports and land grants. What he found was disturbing. Cedar Creek Lodge was built in 1922 by a man named Thomas Cedar. Cedar was a wealthy industrialist who'd made his fortune in mining, but he had an obsession with time. Specifically, with the idea that time wasn't linear, that past, present and future existed simultaneously, and that certain places with the right combination of geographic and magnetic properties could act as windows between different temporal states. Cedar had chosen the location for his lodge very carefully. It sat at the convergence of 3 underground streams, in a valley surrounded by mountains rich in iron ore. According to his private journals, which Marcus had found in the archives of the local historical society, he believed these conditions created a temporal nexus. The lodge was meant to be an experiment. Cedar invited guests, hunters, philosophers, scientists, and asked them to record their experiences in a special book. A book he'd had specially made, using paper treated with rare minerals and bound in leather from an animal he claimed had died outside of time. The experiment worked too well. Within months of opening, guests began reporting strange dreams, feelings of déjà vu, and visions of future events. Some claimed they could see their own deaths in the pages of the guest book. Cedar became obsessed with the phenomenon. He spent months at the lodge, barely eating, rarely sleeping, constantly writing in the book. His final entry, dated October the 16th, 1923, was barely legible. The book is alive. It feeds on time itself. Every signature binds the signer to this place, to this moment. We are all trapped in amber, preserved forever in the eternal October of our first signing. Cedar disappeared that night. His body was never found. But according to Marcus's research, people matching his description have been spotted at the lodge repeatedly over the decades. Always in October, always looking exactly the same age as when he'd first vanished. "Don't you see?" Marcus said over the phone. "We're part of it now. We've seen the book. We know about it. That makes us connected to the place, to the time loop. But we didn't sign it," I said. "Doesn't matter. We interacted with it. We touched it. That's enough." He was right, and I knew it. The pull was getting stronger every day. I'd started dreaming about the lodge, about the book, about returning to that room and finally understanding what it all meant. Last night, Marcus called me again. "I'm going back," he said. "When?" "Tomorrow, October 16th. It's been exactly 12 years since we were there." The date hit me like ice water. October 16th, the same date that appeared over and over in the book, the anniversary that seemed to pull people back. "I'll come with you," I said, without even thinking about it. "No, this is something I have to do alone." But I knew he was wrong. We'd found the lodge together. We'd experienced the impossible together. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. I'm writing this now, at 6 a.m. on October 16th, 1990. I can feel the pull stronger than ever. It's not just curiosity anymore. It's a physical sensation, like gravity, pulling me north toward the Canadian wilderness. Marcus thinks he can outsmart the book. He thinks if he goes back voluntarily, on the anniversary, he can somehow break the cycle, control when and how he engages with the phenomenon. But I've been thinking about those entries we'd read, about the pattern of names appearing again and again across the decades. None of them chose to come back, not really. They were compelled, drawn by something deeper than choice. The book doesn't just record visits, it creates them. I'm going to drive north today. I'll probably reach the trailhead around sunset. With any luck, I'll catch up to Marcus before he reaches the lodge. Not to stop him. I know I can't do that, any more than he could stop me if our positions were reversed. But maybe, if we're together when we face whatever's waiting in that room, we'll have a better chance of understanding it, of finding a way out of the loop that's been claiming people for nearly 70 years. Or maybe we'll just become 2 more names in the book, 2 more signatures in impossible ink written on dates that haven't happened yet. I guess I'll find out tonight. The sun is rising now. I can see mountains in the distance, the same mountains that shelter Cedar Creek Lodge, the same mountains I've been dreaming about for 12 years. The pull is so strong now, it's hard to think about anything else. I keep imagining that room, with its perfect preservation and its glowing book. I keep thinking about all the questions we didn't get to ask, all the mysteries we left unsolved. Part of me knows this is exactly what happened to Samuel Morrison in 1923, to George Patterson in 1931, to every person whose name appears multiple times in that impossible guest registry. They all started with curiosity. They all told themselves they were going back by choice. They all believed they could solve the mystery and walk away. But none of them ever did. I can see my hands shaking as I write this, not from fear exactly, from anticipation, like an addict who's been clean for months suddenly given access to their drug of choice. The book is calling, not with sound, but with something deeper, something that bypasses rational thought and speaks directly to the part of the brain that processes time and memory. I should throw away my car keys, burn the maps, go back to bed, and try to forget everything that happened at Cedar Creek Lodge. But I know I won't, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I can already see myself walking into that preserved room. I can see myself opening that leather cover and finding fresh ink on pages that shouldn't exist. I can see my own signature, written in my own hand, dated sometime in the future I haven't lived yet. And I can see myself finally understanding what Thomas Cedar discovered in 1923, what the book really is, what it wants. The sun is fully up now, time to go. If someone finds this account, if something happens to me and Marcus, know this: Cedar Creek Lodge is real, the book is real, and once you know about it, once you've seen it, you become part of its collection. The temporal nexus Cedar created doesn't just bend time, it breaks it, creates loops and eddies where past, present and future swirl together like water going down a drain. And at the centre of it all is that guest book, feeding on signatures, growing stronger with each name added to its pages. Don't go looking for it. Don't try to solve the mystery we couldn't solve. But if you do find yourself at Cedar Creek Lodge, if you discover that preserved room and its impossible book, remember this: the entries aren't predictions of the future. They're invitations. And once you read your own name in fresh ink on pages dated years ahead you've already accepted, the loop closes, the cycle continues. And somewhere in the Canadian wilderness, Thomas Cedar's experiment keeps running, 67 years after he disappeared. Marcus is probably at the trailhead by now. I can feel him getting closer to the lodge, closer to the book, and I can feel myself being pulled after him, like we're connected by an invisible thread that stretches across time and space. The October sun is bright on the highway ahead. The mountains are getting closer. I'm going home. This account was found in a motel room in Jasper, Alberta, on October 17th, 1990. The guest registry showed 2 men had checked in the previous morning. Ben Anders and Marcus Rodriguez. Neither returned to claim their belongings. Park Ranger Daniel Harrison confirmed that both men were reported missing near Cedar Creek on October the 16th, 1990. Search teams found no trace of them. However, Harrison noted that this was not unusual for the area. People go missing up there every few years, he said. Always in October. Some come back eventually, but they're different, changed, and they all talk about the same thing. An old hunting lodge with a guest book that shouldn't exist. Harrison's report was filed and forgotten, but staff at the Jasper archive noted something unusual when they processed Ben Anders' account. The handwriting matched entries in a collection of historical documents donated to the archive in 1951. Specifically, it matched journal entries attributed to Thomas Cedar, the industrialist who built Cedar Creek Lodge in 1922. The same handwriting, across documents spanning nearly 70 years. The archive director, Dr. Sarah Chen, was asked to comment on this discrepancy. Time isn't as fixed as we like to believe, she said, especially in places where the natural world creates unusual conditions. Cedar Creek sits at a convergence point. Underground streams, magnetic anomalies, elevation changes that affect atmospheric pressure. Some places exist outside normal temporal flow, and some people get caught in the current. Dr. Chen's comments were not included in the official report. Cedar Creek Lodge remains abandoned, but every October, park rangers report unusual activity in the area. Lights in windows that should be dark, smoke from chimneys in buildings that should be cold. And every few years, hikers report finding a pristine room in the decaying structure. A room with a leather-bound guest book, filled with signatures dated years in the future. The book is never there when authorities arrive to investigate. But the reports continue. Always in October, always the same story. A guest registry that records visits before they happen. A temporal trap disguised as historical curiosity. A loop that turns explorers into exhibits. Visitors into permanent residents of a moment that never ends. Rangers now post warnings at all trailheads leading towards Cedar Creek, but the warnings are deliberately vague. Too much detail, too much explanation, and people go looking for the lodge deliberately. The mystery becomes an attraction. The trap resets itself. If you're planning to hike in the Canadian Rockies this October, stay on marked trails. Avoid abandoned structures. And if you find a hunting lodge that looks too well preserved for its age, walk away. Don't look for the guest book. Don't try to solve the mystery. Because once you know about Cedar Creek Lodge, once you've seen that impossible registry with its future dated entries, you become part of the collection. Your signature will appear in fresh ink on pages that haven't been written yet. And every October 16th, for the rest of eternity, you'll feel the pull to return. To sign your name one more time. To become a permanent guest at the lodge that exists outside of time. The cycle continues. The book keeps growing, and somewhere in the preserved room of Cedar Creek Lodge, Thomas Cedar's experiment lives on. Forever.